You do not have to trust me, Daniel Brooks said quietly. Just do not sit through this alone. The frightened alien woman stared at his open hand while the auction bell tested once above them. Cold white light covered the processing corridor of Orion Freeport Contract Exchange. Metal benches lined one wall. Blue boundary strips divided bidders from transferable workers. Ventilation hummed overhead with the mechanical indifference of a system functioning exactly as designed. Daniel had come to Orion to dispute a cargo bond on his freight vessel, not to attend an auction. A processing error had routed him through the wrong security lane and placed him beside her for 6 minutes. 6 minutes had been enough. Her turquoise blue skin looked almost gray beneath the commercial lights. Silver-white hair framed a face that was beautiful but unmistakably non-human, with elongated cheekbones, a flatter nose bridge, tapered ears, amber eyes divided by narrow vertical pupils, and faint luminous markings along her temples. An amber status band circled her wrist. Her fingers touched Daniel's palm, pulled away, then returned. This time they closed around his hand. He did not squeeze. He let her decide how tightly to hold on. The trembling continued for several seconds. Then it slowed. I am Daniel, he said. She looked toward the processing cameras. Are you registered to bid? No. Then why are you here? Daniel glanced at the blue line beneath his boots. Apparently, Orion Freeport believes cargo brokers and frightened civilians require the same hallway. Her amber eyes shifted toward him. I am not classified as a civilian. Daniel did not like the way she said classified. An automated voice filled the corridor. Contract 72. Prepare for presentation. Her hand tightened instantly. Daniel looked at her. That is you. She nodded. The overhead terminal activated. Contract 72. Avalari. Relocation obligation active. Labor assignment available. No name appeared. Daniel felt something cold settle behind his ribs. What is your name? She blinked. My name. Yeah. The screen forgot to mention it. For a moment, she seemed uncertain whether the question itself was permitted. Lyra Venn. Daniel repeated it once. Lyra. The luminous markings at her temples brightened faintly. A clerk approached the corridor entrance with a tablet. Contract 72. Stand for verification. Daniel remained seated. Her name is Lyra. The clerk stopped. Several registered bidders turned toward them. At the far end of the processing area, a tall administrator in a charcoal uniform lifted his gaze from a glass terminal. His badge identified him as Commissioner Varek. Identity does not alter obligation, Varek said. His voice was calm, almost courteous. Daniel looked at Lyra, then at the number above her. Maybe obligation should know whose life it is attached to. Varek's expression barely changed. Mr. Brooks, this exchange operates under Frontier Relocation Code. Contract subjects are processed according to verified status. I am sure the paperwork is excellent. It is legally compliant. Those are not always the same compliment. The auction bell sounded again. 2 minutes. Lyra slowly released Daniel's hand because the clerk was waiting. He felt the absence immediately. She stood and moved toward the verification line. Daniel watched the amber band on her wrist brighten as the scanner recognized it. Then he pulled his cargo tablet from his jacket. What are you doing? Lyra asked. Finding out what 72 means. Commissioner Varek stepped closer. The contract packet is public to licensed participants. Daniel entered his cargo credentials. His broker license was accepted. 246 pages appeared. Transport fees. Medical screening. Shelter costs. Administrative charges. Interest. Labor assignment provisions. Daniel scrolled. The third bell sounded. 1 minute. Lyra stood beneath the white auction lights while buyers began opening their bidding interfaces. Daniel reached page 19 and stopped. The original obligation had begun as emergency evacuation from a failing Avalari colony. He looked at Lyra. Did you ask them to rescue you? Her eyes held his. Yes. Daniel looked back at the numbers attached to that rescue. The auction doors began to open. He had spent 20 years reading freight contracts written to hide expensive truths inside harmless words. This one was hiding something much larger. Daniel started reading faster. Daniel reached page 37 before he understood how rescue had become a sentence. The original evacuation charge was almost reasonable. Emergency passage from the failing Avalari colony. Temporary oxygen support. Medical screening. Food. 72 hours of shelter. Then came processing fees, translation fees, transit administration, station accommodation, account maintenance, and interest calculated from the day Lyra boarded the evacuation ship. Daniel scrolled to the final balance. Did they show you this? Lyra stood beneath the verification light several feet away. They showed me a repayment notice. Did it include a labor term? No. Daniel opened the assignment schedule. 8 years, 3 months. He looked up. Lyra, they calculated 8 years and 3 months. Her amber eyes widened. That cannot be right. It is what the contract says. Commissioner Varick approached without hurry. The term is projected. Early satisfaction remains possible. Daniel looked at him. On what income? Varick's expression stayed neutral. Compensation rates are determined by assignment category. Daniel opened the compensation table. Housing deductions, meal deductions, transport deductions, administrative deductions. The numbers answered his question before Varick did. So the work pays the debt, while the work creates more charges. That is an inaccurate simplification. It is an extremely accurate simplification. The auction doors finished opening. Buyers entered beneath bright commercial lights and took their assigned terminals. Lyra looked toward them, then back at Daniel. They told us we could repay what evacuation cost. You can. Daniel turned the tablet toward her. They just forgot to mention how long they expect to keep you doing it. Her temple markings faded almost to darkness. Daniel searched the original authorization. Lyra had agreed to emergency relocation and repayment of reasonable transit expenses. The labor clause appeared later through a referenced standard agreement attached after arrival. Did you sign this second authorization? He asked. They gave me a translation summary. That was not my question. She swallowed. I touched the confirmation panel. Did the summary say transferable labor assignment? No. Daniel saved a copy. Varick noticed. Mr. Brooks, if you intend to challenge disclosure standards, there is an administrative process. How long? Current review time is approximately 90 days. Daniel glanced at the auction clock. 43 seconds. Convenient. The exchange does not control review volume. Of course not. A clerk guided Lyra toward the presentation position. Daniel watched her wrist indicator brighten amber again. She looked smaller beneath the white lights, though nothing about her posture changed. Shoulders straight, chin level, fear contained behind discipline. The auction terminal displayed her number, relocation balance, projected labor term, and approved assignment categories. Still no name. Daniel searched the contract for settlement authority. A buyer could assume the obligation. A licensed guarantor could satisfy it. Labor authority transferred after final assignment confirmation. He stopped. Separate stages. Interesting. He opened the guarantor definition, but the auction announcer began speaking. Contract 72. Opening obligation value confirmed. A corporate bidder entered the first offer. Daniel's tablet chimed. Lyra looked toward him. He could see the question in her face. He had told her he was not a buyer. Daniel entered his cargo broker credentials into the bidding system. Licensed commercial guarantor. Eligible. Commissioner Varick turned toward him. Mr. Brooks. Daniel kept reading. Busy. You stated that you were not participating. I changed my mind about participating. Lyra heard him. Her expression changed immediately. The fear returned, but this time some of it was aimed at him. Daniel. He looked at her. I know what this looks like. Do you? The first bidder increased the offer. Daniel checked his cargo bond. Enough for Lyra. More than enough, if he was willing to make the next several months unpleasant. You said you were not one of them. I am not. Then do not bid. Daniel looked at the contract timer. 20 seconds remained before the opening round closed. He still had not found the sentence he needed, only the structure around it. I cannot explain yet. Lyra's fingers curled against her palm. That is not an answer. No. Daniel entered a higher bid. His tablet chimed. For the first time since they had met, Lyra looked at him as if she regretted ever taking his hand. Daniel felt it. He bid anyway. Somewhere inside 246 pages of polished language, the exchange had separated debt from ownership because the law required it to. Daniel only needed enough legal standing to reach that separation before the clock ran out. The second bid erased nearly a quarter of Daniel's cargo bond. The third took another 12%. He watched the numbers fall, while the corporate bidder across the exchange responded without hesitation. Lyra stood beneath the presentation lights, staring at him instead of the auction display. Her expression had gone quiet. That was worse than anger. Daniel searched another cross-reference while the bidding timer reset. Frontier relocation code, guarantor settlement, he muttered. Commissioner Varek heard him. You are wasting your time. Daniel looked up. That usually means I am getting close. A successful bidder assumes financial responsibility for the obligation. I know. And receives the corresponding labor assignment after settlement. Daniel stopped scrolling. After settlement. Varek's face remained still. Daniel returned to the contract. There. Section 91. Debt satisfaction and labor assignment were listed as separate registry events. He opened the reference statute. The first paragraph described guarantor payment. The second described assignment acceptance. Daniel read it twice. A licensed guarantor could satisfy an obligation on behalf of the relocated individual. Compulsory labor authority transferred only after affirmative assignment acceptance by the guarantor. His pulse slowed. Not because the problem was solved. Because now it had edges. The corporate bidder raised again. Daniel answered immediately. His tablet flashed a liquidity warning. Lyra finally spoke. Stop. Daniel looked at her. 5 minutes. You already asked me to trust you. I know. And now you are bidding for 8 years of my life. Her voice stayed controlled, but the luminous markings at her temples had nearly disappeared. Daniel hated every second of what she thought he was doing. I am bidding for legal standing. That means nothing to me. It will. That is what people say when they want someone else to wait quietly. The words landed cleanly. Daniel had no defense against them. She was right. He looked down at the tablet. Then do not trust me. Lyra blinked. What? You do not owe me trust. He entered another bid. Judge me when I am finished. The timer dropped. 12 seconds. The corporate bidder hesitated. Daniel's offer exceeded the projected obligation balance, plus exchange settlement costs. That was the mechanism. The winner was not purchasing a person. Legally, the winner was committing enough capital to close the relocation debt in exchange for eligibility to accept the resulting labor assignment. The distinction had been buried under commercial language because almost every bidder wanted the second part. Daniel did not. 7 seconds. No counteroffer. 3, 2. The terminal chimed. Provisional guarantor confirmed. Lyra closed her eyes. Daniel felt sick seeing it. Commissioner Varek relaxed. Congratulations, Mr. Brooks. Once settlement clears, Contract 72 can be assigned to your vessel or another registered worksite. Can be? Daniel asked. Varek's gaze sharpened. That is the standard process. Not what I asked. Daniel opened the settlement interface. 2 confirmations waited behind the provisional award. Satisfy relocation obligation. Then, separately, accept labor assignment. Daniel almost smiled. Almost. There you are. Varek stepped closer. Mr. Brooks. Daniel selected the first option but did not confirm yet. If I satisfy this obligation, what remains? The assignment must be processed. Must be offered or must be accepted? Silence. Lyra opened her eyes. Daniel turned the tablet so she could see the 2 separate confirmations. Her amber pupils narrowed. What does that mean? I am still checking. Varek's voice became colder. The exchange does not provide speculative legal interpretation during active transactions. Daniel tapped the registry help function. Good thing I did not ask the exchange. He submitted a formal automated query to Orion's civil registry. If guarantor satisfies relocation obligation and declines labor assignment, states subject status. For seconds passed. The answer appeared. Obligation closed. No labor authority created. Individual returns to released civilian status. Lyra stared at the words. Varek said nothing. Daniel saved an authenticated copy. Then he looked beyond her. 10 other Avalari waited beneath 10 other contract numbers. 10 amber wrist indicators. 10 projected labor terms. Daniel opened the batch manifest. Lyra followed his gaze. Daniel. Yeah. What are you thinking? He checked his cargo bond, insurance reserve, and ship repair fund. The numbers were ugly. He looked at the 11 contract displays. I am thinking your paperwork has company. Commissioner Varek stepped between him and the next bidding terminal. You have already secured contract 72. Daniel looked past him at the numbers. That is the problem. The next auction bell sounded. Contract 73 entered presentation. Daniel registered another bid. Contract 73 closed faster than Lyra's had. Daniel understood the system now. He knew where the settlement costs appeared, how the bidding increments changed near the obligation balance, and exactly which confirmation created labor authority. The knowledge did not make watching the process easier. Avalari man. Contract 73. 7 years, 1 month. Daniel won the provisional guarantee. Then 74. A woman with silver-white hair braided behind tapered ears. 6 years, 9 months. Daniel bid again. His cargo bond dropped below half. Commissioner Varek stood beside the registry console with his hands folded behind his back. You cannot employ 11 workers aboard a freight vessel. Daniel kept his eyes on the bidding timer. Correct. Your registered crew capacity is 4. Also correct. Then your bidding pattern has no legitimate commercial purpose. Daniel entered another offer. That depends on what you think the purpose is. The terminal chimed. Provisional guarantor confirmed. Lyra watched from the holding area. She understood now. Daniel could see it in the way her amber eyes followed each contract from display to tablet. But understanding had created a different fear. She knew what the numbers were costing him. Contract 75 opened. Daniel authorized part of his cargo insurance reserve. A warning appeared. Available commercial coverage reduced. He accepted. Daniel, Lyra called softly. He looked toward her. You cannot afford all of them. I noticed. Then stop. That sounds familiar. She did not smile. I mean it. Daniel looked at the remaining displays. 7 contracts left. So do I. Another corporate bidder entered. Daniel raised. Why? Lyra asked. You found the clause for me. The clause does not know your name. He glanced toward contract 75. Neither does that screen know hers. The Avalari woman beneath it looked toward him. Daniel turned to Varek. What is her name? The registry identifies her by contract number during presentation. I did not ask the registry. Varek's expression hardened. Daniel looked toward the woman herself. What is your name? She hesitated. Mara Telm. Daniel nodded. Mara. He entered the next bid. Lyra's temple markings brightened. Contract 75 closed. Daniel opened the batch file and began replacing numbers in his private notes with names as each person spoke. Mara Telm. Oren Vale. Selamar. Karen Knoll. Tavi Wren. Jessaval. Aaron Sol. Every name made the display above them look more absurd. Contract 76. 77. 78. The auction continued. Daniel's insurance reserve disappeared. Then came Wayfarer's repair fund. That money was supposed to replace a coolant regulator, inspect the port maneuvering thruster, and keep the old ship commercially certified through another year. Daniel transferred it into the guarantee account. His tablet turned red. Vessel maintenance reserve below recommended level. You are compromising your own ship, Varek said. I am aware. For 11 strangers. Daniel looked at him. How long does someone have to know a stranger before 8 years of their life starts matching? Varek did not answer. Contract 79 closed. Then 80. 3 remained. Lyra moved closer to the blue boundary line. Daniel. Yeah. If you do this, what happens to you? He checked Wayfarer's remaining funds. I become very familiar with inexpensive meals. I am serious. So am I. Your work? Complicated. Your ship? Annoyed. Your future? Daniel looked at her. Still mine. The word stopped her. He nodded toward the 11 Avalari. That is the whole point. Contract 81 opened. Daniel bid. His freight tablet requested additional collateral. He pledged his next confirmed cargo payment. Approved. Contract 81 closed. One more auction bell. Contract 82. The final Avalari stepped beneath the white lights. Daniel had almost nothing left that the exchange would accept. Varek saw it. You have reached your practical limit. Daniel opened his cargo broker account and found one remaining asset, a refundable docking bond reserved for Wayfarer's departure clearance. Using it meant he would need another way to pay the station before leaving. He authorized it. Lyra closed her eyes briefly. Daniel. He entered the bid. You asked why. She opened her eyes. Yes. The competing bidder raised. Daniel used the final available amount. The timer counted down. 5 seconds. 3. 1. The terminal chimed. Provisional guarantor confirmed. 11 contracts now sat beneath Daniel Brooks's credentials. Commissioner Varek stared at the list. Why 11? Daniel looked across the exchange. 11 amber wristbands. 11 faces. 11 names written on his tablet where the auction displays still showed numbers. Because there are 11 names. He opened the settlement interface. The room became strangely quiet. Varek's confidence finally shifted. Mr. Brooks, Consider carefully what you do next. Daniel selected all 11 relocation obligations. Satisfied debt appeared on the screen. Beneath it waited the second confirmation. Accept labor assignment. Daniel looked at Lyra. For the first time since he had begun bidding, she was no longer looking at him like a buyer. She was looking at the button beneath his thumb. Daniel pressed satisfied debt. The settlement confirmation took 7 seconds. Daniel counted every one. A progress indicator moved across his freight tablet while 11 relocation balances were paid from his cargo bond, insurance reserve, repair fund, future freight payment, and docking deposit. When the process finished, his available operating capital was almost gone. The exchange terminal chimed. Obligations satisfied. Commissioner Varric exhaled slowly. The debts are closed. Proceed to assignment. Daniel looked at the second confirmation waiting on the screen. Accept labor assignment. 11 names appeared beneath it now because settlement processing required verified civil identities. Lyra Venn, Mara Telm, Oren Vale, Selamar, Karen Knoll, Tavi Wren, Jessa Vol, Aaron Soul. 3 more names followed. Daniel read all 11 before touching anything. Varric watched him. Select your registered worksite. No. Your vessel has insufficient crew capacity, so the assignments may be distributed among approved facilities. No. Varric's voice became quieter. Mr. Brooks, you have paid the obligations. The next step is assignment acceptance. Daniel nodded. Exactly. He selected Lyra's name. Her amber wrist indicator brightened automatically. A new window opened. Accept labor assignment? Daniel pressed decline. A warning appeared. Declining assignment creates no labor authority and returns individual to released civilian status. Confirm? Daniel pressed confirm. Lyra's wristband changed from amber to green. She stared at it. The green light remained for 2 seconds. Then it went dark. Above her, Contract 72 disappeared. The registry terminal chimed once. Lyra Venn. Released civilian. Nobody spoke. Daniel selected Mara Telm. Decline. Her band turned green, then dark. Another chime. Released. Oren Vale. Decline. Green. Dark. Released. Varric stepped closer. Stop processing. Daniel looked up. On what legal basis? This transaction was conducted for labor assignment. Show me where acceptance is mandatory. The commercial intent is obvious. Intent is not a checkbox. Daniel returned to the tablet. Selamar. Decline. Released. Karen Knoll. Decline. Released. The terminal chimed after every name. No applause. No dramatic announcement. Just one small electronic sound each time a number stopped being useful. Lyra watched the other amber bands go dark. Her own hands were completely still now. Varric opened his administrative console. I am placing these releases under immediate review. Daniel continued. Tavi Wren. Decline. Jessa Vol. Decline. Aaron Soul. Decline. 3 remained. You may review anything you like, Daniel said. The civil registry already authenticated the statute. You knowingly entered commercial bidding without intent to accept the awarded assignments. I entered as a licensed guarantor. You outbid legitimate employers. Daniel paused. Legitimate employers had the same option I did. Varric said nothing. Daniel selected the 9th name. Decline. Released. The 10th. Decline. Released. 1 remained. The final Avalari stood beneath Contract 82, watching him with wide amber eyes. Daniel pressed decline. Green. Dark. The last contract number vanished. 11 names remained. Varric stared at the empty presentation displays. You have spent nearly everything you possess and acquired nothing. Daniel looked around the exchange. 11 people stood without active labor indicators. That depends on your definition of nothing. Lyra crossed the blue boundary line. Nobody stopped her. She seemed to notice that halfway across and slowed, almost expecting a clerk to call her back. No one did. She reached Daniel and looked down at her dark wristband. What happens now? Now you are a civilian. And the assignment? There is no assignment. To your ship? No. To another company? No. Her eyes searched his face. Then where am I supposed to go? Daniel opened the station travel registry and created a blank civilian credential. He transferred her verified identity into it and handed the tablet to her. The destination field was empty. Lyra stared at the blank space. You did not choose one. That seemed like your job. Her temple markings brightened. She looked at the credential, then at Daniel. What do I owe you? The question came automatically. Daniel heard that more clearly than anything else she had said. Nothing. Lyra shook her head. You spent your cargo bond. Your repair money. Everything. That was my choice. You paid for me. Daniel met her amber eyes. No. The exchange ventilation hummed around them. I paid the bill they used to keep you from leaving. He pointed toward her dark wristband. Those are different things. Lyra looked down. Slowly, she touched the release catch. The band opened. No alarm sounded. No warning light appeared. She removed it and placed it on the registry counter. Daniel stepped aside, leaving the corridor ahead of her completely open. For the first time since the evacuation of her world, there was no number above Lyra's head, no assigned work site waiting on a screen, and no stranger legally entitled to decide her next destination. There was only an empty field on a travel credential and a question nobody had thought to ask her before. Where did she want to go? Freedom lasted 11 minutes before Orion Freeport tried to turn it back into paperwork. Daniel and Lyra had barely reached the civilian transit concourse when her new credential flashed amber. Administrative review pending. Travel authorization temporarily limited. Lyra stopped walking. The other 10 Avalari received the same notice almost simultaneously. Daniel stared at his tablet. That was fast. Lyra's temple markings dimmed. Varric. Probably. Can he restore the contracts? Not by pressing a button. Daniel opened the review notice. Commissioner Varric had challenged the releases on procedural grounds, arguing that Daniel had entered the bidding process without legitimate intent to accept labor assignments. Until Orion's independent transit office ruled, the 11 civilians could remain on the station but could not board outbound transport. Lyra read over his shoulder. So we are free, but we cannot leave. Temporarily. That word has not been kind to me. Daniel looked at her. Fair. He opened the governing statute again. Varric's complaint depended on intent. The actual code depended on actions. Daniel had registered as a licensed guarantor. He had won provisional settlement rights. He had satisfied the debts. Then he had declined assignments the registry explicitly allowed him to decline. Nothing in the statute required a guarantor to want labor authority. Daniel attached the authenticated query from the civil registry and submitted an emergency passenger status appeal. The system estimated 90 minutes. Lyra watched the timer appear. What happens while we wait? Daniel glanced toward a row of civilian seats. We experienced the ancient human tradition of waiting for somebody in an office to read something. The 11 Avalari sat together. Nobody instructed them where. That seemed to matter. Daniel opened his ship account and immediately regretted it. Wayfarer's maintenance reserve was below commercial minimum. His docking deposit was gone. His next freight payment had been pledged. A separate notice informed him that his cargo license would enter temporary financial review unless he restored operating reserves within 30 days. Lyra saw the red indicators. This happened because of us. This happened because I spent money I had. For us. Still my decision. She looked at him for several seconds. Then let me work on your ship. Daniel shook his head. No. You need help. Probably. I know cargo cooling systems. Avalari evacuation vessels use similar pressure architecture. I could work until your reserve is restored. And what would I pay you? Lyra hesitated. You already paid. Daniel closed the account screen. There it is. What? The contract trying to grow back. Her eyes narrowed. I am offering. I know. That matters. He leaned forward. But are you offering because you want the job, or because you think kindness created another debt? Lyra looked down at the civilian credential in her hands. I do not know. Then do not sign anything today. Silence settled between them. Travelers crossed the concourse carrying bags, changing gates, buying food, complaining about delays. Small choices everywhere. Lyra watched them. What if I want to help you anyway? Then help me because you choose to. Not because you think you belong on my balance sheet. Her temple markings brightened slightly. Humans make simple things difficult. We are gifted. Daniel's tablet chimed. The emergency review had finished early. He opened the ruling. Varric's challenge was denied. Guarantor intent does not create labor authority. Affirmative assignment acceptance is required. Released civilian status confirmed. 11 travel credentials changed from amber to green. Lyra stared at hers. Then another notice appeared beneath the ruling. Compliance audit initiated. The transit office had automatically flagged 36 earlier relocation cases processed under conflicting assignment interpretations. Daniel read it twice. What does that mean? Lyra asked. It means somebody has to reopen those files. Will those people be released? I do not know. Daniel refused to promise more than the ruling said. But now somebody has to ask whether they should have been assigned at all. Lyra looked back toward the exchange corridor. 36 old contracts. 36 lives hidden somewhere behind numbers. Because you read the contract. Daniel slipped the tablet into his jacket. Because the contract finally had to explain itself. A route map illuminated across the wall ahead of them. Hundreds of destinations. Lyra looked at it, then at Daniel. What happens now? He stepped aside so she had an unobstructed view. Now you pick somewhere. And if I choose badly? Daniel smiled. Then you get to choose again. Lyra turned toward the map. For several seconds, she did nothing. Then she lifted one steady turquoise hand and began searching destinations on her own. Lyra chose Havenvale because the settlement description contained one sentence she read 4 times. Avalari community established after the colony evacuations. Daniel stood beside her without speaking while she opened the destination details. Agricultural domes, technical workshops, civilian housing, translation services, population 12,000, registered Avalari residents, 419. I might know someone there, she said. That sounds like a reason. My mother's friend left before our evacuation. Then maybe she is still there. Lyra looked at him. And if she is not? Daniel nodded toward the route map. Then Havenvale has 418 other possibilities. Her temple markings brightened faintly. She selected the destination. The system requested confirmation. Lyra hesitated. Daniel noticed her finger hovering above the control. Nobody is timing you. I know. Nobody is choosing for you. I know that too. She drew a slow breath and pressed confirm. Her credential chimed. Havenvale. Civilian passenger. Departure in 3 hours. Lyra stared at the result as though she had expected the system to change its mind. It did not. Around them, the other Avalari began choosing destinations of their own. Mara selected a manufacturing settlement where her sister had registered 2 years earlier. Oren chose Havenvale. Sela needed more time. Daniel entered nothing for anyone. He simply answered questions when they asked. An hour later, he returned to Wayfarer to inspect the coolant regulator that his missing repair fund had been intended to replace. Lyra followed him to the docking bay. You should be at the passenger terminal, Daniel said. My shuttle leaves in 2 hours. That is generally how departure times work. She ignored him and looked into the open maintenance panel. Your pressure regulator is oscillating. Daniel glanced at the diagnostic display. You can read Terran coolant architecture? Pressure is pressure. That is suspiciously reasonable. Lyra crouched beside the panel and pointed toward the secondary valve. Your regulator is compensating for a sensor error. Daniel checked manually. She was right. The sensor was drifting by almost 8%. Replacing it would cost far less than replacing the regulator. You just saved me several thousand credits. Lyra looked at him. Do you owe me now? Daniel stopped. Her expression remained perfectly serious for 2 seconds before the markings at her temples brightened. He laughed. That was cruel. I am learning. He removed the faulty sensor. Lyra held the inspection light. For 20 minutes they worked without discussing contracts, auctions, or debt. Just tools, pressure readings, coolant flow, ordinary things. When the replacement sensor came online, the regulator stabilized. Daniel closed the panel. There. Wayfarer may continue disappointing me for another year. Lyra lowered the light. Your ship is old. Experienced. The engine cowling is 3 different colors. Character. Your cargo lift makes a sound every 11 seconds. Daniel looked offended. You have been here 2 hours and already criticized my ship. You criticized Avalari contract law after 6 minutes. Fair. A station announcement called Havenvale passengers to begin early processing. Lyra became quiet. Daniel placed the tools back into their case. That is you. Yes. She did not move. Scared, he asked. Yes. Makes sense. You are not going to tell me everything will be fine. Daniel shook his head. I have never been to Havenvale. Lyra looked at him. Then what are you going to tell me? That if you get there and hate it, your credential still has your name on it. He handed her the inspection light. You can leave again. She looked down at the tool, then toward the passenger corridor. I spent months being told where I would work, where I would sleep, when I could travel. I know. Now every choice feels too large. Daniel nodded. Then make small ones. Such as, he pointed toward the inspection light. First choice. Put that back in my tool case or steal it. Lyra looked at the light. She placed it carefully inside the case. I chose not to become a criminal. Strong beginning. She smiled. The boarding announcement sounded again. This time Lyra picked up her travel bag. Daniel walked beside her toward the gate. He did not take her hand. He did not tell her where to stand. He did not tell her what came next. At the entrance to the civilian terminal, Lyra stopped and looked back at Wayfarer. Daniel. Yeah. I think I understand something. Dangerous habit. Freedom is not knowing what happens next. Daniel considered it. Sometimes. She looked toward the open gate. And going anyway. Her hand no longer trembled when she lifted her credential to the scanner. The boarding scanner turned green, but Lyra did not step through. She stood at the entrance to the civilian terminal with her travel bag in one hand and her credential in the other while passengers moved around her. Daniel waited several feet behind. He did not ask what was wrong. He had learned that silence sometimes gave her more room than questions. After several seconds, Lyra turned. There is something I forgot. Daniel glanced toward Wayfarer. If it is the inspection light, I checked. Not that. She walked back toward him. The boarding display showed 51 minutes until departure. Plenty of time. Still, every step she took seemed deliberate. When you paid the obligations, she said, I asked what I owed you. I remember. You said nothing. Still accurate. I did not believe you. Daniel nodded. Also understandable. Lyra looked down at her travel credential. Her own name glowed across it above Haven Vale. For 11 months. Every useful thing came with a number attached. Food. Shelter. Medicine. Transport. If someone helped, the balance increased. Her luminous temple markings dimmed. I stopped knowing the difference between kindness and another charge. Daniel kept his hands at his sides. That was probably useful to the people writing the contracts. Yes. She looked at him. You gave me something I did not know how to record. A complicated afternoon. The corner of her mouth moved. A choice. Daniel's expression softened. That one does not need recording. The boarding system announced Haven Vale passengers again. Lyra glanced toward the gate, then back at him. I am going. Good. You are not disappointed? Why would I be? Because I am leaving. Daniel looked genuinely confused. Lyra, I spent almost everything I had making sure nobody could decide where you went. It would be strange to become upset when you decide. She stared at him for a moment, then laughed quietly. Humans are difficult. We prefer complicated. She reached toward the dark administrative band she had kept in a side pocket of her travel bag. Daniel had assumed she discarded it. She removed it and held it in her palm. I thought about keeping this. Why? To remember. Daniel looked at the dead amber strip. Do you need it for that? Lyra considered the question. Then she walked to a recycling unit beside the terminal and dropped the band inside. The machine accepted it with an ordinary mechanical click. Nothing ceremonial happened. No alarm. No announcement. The band simply disappeared. Lyra returned. No, she said. I do not. Daniel smiled faintly. Traveling lighter already. 38 minutes. The other Avalari heading toward Haven Vale began passing through the gate. Oren waved to Daniel before scanning his credential. Lyra watched him disappear down the boarding corridor. I should go. Probably. She took one step, then stopped. Daniel. Yeah. She extended her hand. The gesture was slow but certain. Daniel looked at it. The first time he had offered his hand, her fingers had trembled before touching his. This time her hand was completely steady. He did not reach immediately. He let the choice remain visible between them for one quiet second. Then he took it. Her turquoise fingers closed around his. The first time, Lyra said, I needed something to hold on to. Daniel waited. Her amber eyes met his. This time, I just wanted to. No contract followed the gesture. No obligation changed hands. No number appeared above her. Daniel squeezed once. Gently, then released when she did. Safe trip, Lyra. Keep your ship flying, Daniel. That is becoming financially ambitious. She smiled. Check the secondary coolant sensor before replacing the regulator. You have been free for 3 hours and already give orders. Advice. Important legal distinction. Her temple markings brightened with amusement. The final boarding notice sounded. Lyra turned toward the gate. She scanned her credential. Green. Civilian passenger. She stepped through. Halfway down the corridor, she looked back once. Daniel raised one hand. Lyra did the same. Then she continued toward Haven Vale. Daniel stood beneath the station lights until she disappeared around the corner. The auction had once placed a price beside Contract 72. Orion Freeport had measured transport, food, shelter, medicine, labor, and years. But the one thing its accounting system had never understood was the simplest thing Daniel had given her: a hand with no invoice attached. 4 months after Lyra left Orion Freeport, Daniel received a message while lying beneath Wayfarer's cargo lift with half the control housing open above his face. His tablet chimed from the deck. "If that is another compliance notice, I am selling this ship." It chimed again. Daniel slid out, wiped his hands on a work cloth, and opened the message. Lyra appeared beneath a pale gold sky. Behind her stood low civilian buildings, agricultural domes, and rows of blue-green trees moving in the wind. Sunlight caught the turquoise tones of her skin and the luminous markings along her temples. No amber band circled her wrist. "Hello, Daniel." He sat against the bulkhead. "I found my mother's friend." Lyra smiled before continuing. "Her name is Vara. She thought my family had disappeared during the evacuation. Apparently, I was listed under a contract number in records she could not access." Daniel looked down at the tablet. Of course she had been. There are 427 Avalari on Haven Vale now. 8 arrived last month after Orion reviewed older relocation cases. Her expression became more serious. The compliance audit expanded. The transit office found that many people had never been clearly told that debt settlement and labor assignment were separate decisions. Daniel leaned forward. "Commissioner Varek was removed from contract administration while the investigation continues. Orion also changed the processing system." Lyra paused. "The presentation screens show names now." Daniel smiled. A small change. Almost embarrassingly small. Yet he remembered white auction lights and Contract 72 glowing above a woman whose name the system had considered irrelevant. "I thought you would like that," Lyra said. She knew him too well. "I work at the Haven Vale Arrival Center now. I help displaced families read relocation documents before they sign anything." Her amber eyes brightened. "They pay me." Daniel laughed. "Important detail." "Very. I checked the contract twice." The recording continued. "Sometimes people arrive frightened. They ask what they owe for food before they eat. They ask whether shelter creates an obligation. They ask permission to choose a chair." Her voice softened. "I understand why." Wind moved her silver-white hair. "So I tell them what you told me. Help does not automatically become debt." Daniel sat quietly. Behind him, Wayfarer's cargo lift emitted an impatient diagnostic beep. Lyra glanced away from the recorder, then back. "There is one more thing. Haven Vale is sending civilian observers to Orion next month. They asked me to join the delegation." She lifted her travel credential. I said yes. A faint smile appeared. "My choice." The message ended. Daniel remained on the deck for several seconds. Then the cargo lift beeped again. "You have terrible timing." He returned to work. 6 weeks later, Wayfarer docked at Orion Freeport with a shipment of agricultural pumps. Daniel walked through the same commercial concourse where he had once watched people reduced to contract numbers. The blue boundary lines were gone. Independent translation terminals stood beside every processing desk. Civilian review instructions appeared before relocation agreements could be confirmed. And the presentation screens displayed names. Daniel stopped near the metal bench where Lyra had first taken his hand. "You are blocking traffic." He knew the voice before turning. Lyra stood behind him in dark civilian travel clothes, a small bag over one shoulder. Her face was the same. Her posture was not. Shoulders relaxed. Hands steady. Amber eyes bright beneath the station lights. "I have a talent for standing in inconvenient places," Daniel said. "I remember." "How was the delegation?" "Long. Successful. We made 3 administrators explain the difference between consent and confirmation for 6 hours." Daniel nodded approvingly. "Beautiful." Lyra laughed. Travelers passed around them. No auction bell sounded. No amber band glowed. No number waited above her head. "Daniel," she said. "Yeah." She held out her hand. He looked at it, then at her. "Need something to hold on to?" Lyra shook her head. "No." Her temple markings brightened softly. "I thought we could walk to the observation deck." Daniel took her hand. "Your choice." "My choice." They started walking. For months earlier, Orion had placed a price beside her number and called the process lawful. Daniel had never been powerful enough to change the galaxy in one afternoon. He had simply refused to confuse a paid debt with ownership, a contract with consent, or a frightened person with a number. Sometimes humanity did not arrive carrying a weapon or wearing a uniform. Sometimes it arrived with an open hand, waited for someone to choose it, and asked for nothing in return.